Desperation is growing in Tapachula. On Wednesday, hundreds of migrants, mainly from Haiti and Central America, took to the streets in protest. They're frustrated over Mexican government policy that prevents them from leaving the city.
We just want to get out because we're not here to stay. We're just going through. We have no money, no food, nothing. We're in prison here without anything, and the government does not help.
Some protesters are parents with children who say the city is overcrowded and food and shelter are becoming harder to find.
With my children, it's very difficult. There are no jobs, no food. We're living on the street. We have many problems. I have nothing. We need help.
Since the start of the year, the number of migrants arriving in southern Mexico has only grown, and so have tensions between them and authorities.
This cannot be happening. It's like we just came from Africa in chains, like modern-day slaves. In a democracy, everybody has to be free.
With shelters for migrants and asylum seekers already over capacity, many say their patience has run out.
Demonstrations like this one with hundreds of migrants blocking off traffic have become quite commonplace here in Tapachula, and local residents tell us that this is the worst migrant crisis the city has experienced in recent memory.
An estimated 40,000 migrants are currently stuck in Tapachula. Some have been here for months, and more continue to arrive every day.
I call President Lopez Obrador to stop being a puppet of the United States, to stop being the guard dog of the United States, to follow Mexican law and stop repressing the migrant population, stop beating up migrants, stop combating and treating migrants like criminals.
Despite the Mexican government's strategy to contain migrants in the southern part of the country, experts warn the impact on overall migrant numbers reaching the U.S. southern border is negligible. Instead, the policy of limiting their mobility has only turned the city of Tapachula into a pressure cooker.
This is as bad as I've ever seen it. There is no southern border. It's pure chaos. Border Patrol agents are doing everything they possibly can. God bless them for the work that they're doing to push back against it. But there are literally thousands of migrants that have come. And there's tens of thousands on the way. The latest reports I have, there are 8,300 migrants waiting to be processed, not to mention those that are already being processed. This is as bad as it's ever been. It's as if there's a flash mob here in Del Rio.
The numbers are growing. More and more people crossing the border in Del Rio and ending up under an international bridge.
Just this past July, Border Patrol in the Del Rio sector came across about 300 undocumented migrants. On Monday, Del Rio's mayor says 2,200 people showed up, and that number continues to grow.
This is beyond crisis. This is urgent. This is dire.
It is a sight that's hard to miss in Del Rio. Thousands of migrants gathered under the international bridge there. Del Rio Mayor Bruno Lozano taking a moment to show the overwhelming situation.
As you can see behind me right now, we have up to 4,000 individuals that have crossed over the Rio Grande.
Lozano says the buildup under the bridge began on Monday. The total by 3:30 this afternoon standing at 5,600 migrants. Many of them, Lozano says, are Haitian. One driver sharing this video with us as she was making her way over the bridge, capturing the moment one group crossed the river.
What you see behind me are individuals that have not even been processed or detained. These individuals here are actually just waiting to get detained.
Seeking asylum is a legal process where migrants give themselves up at the border before their case is scheduled in court. Customs and Border Protection confirms the bridge is serving as a temporary staging site to provide shield from the sun, while migrants wait to be taken into Border Patrol custody.
And unfortunately, the magnitude right now of individuals in such a small, finite area is health, it's safety.
CPB also says drinking water, towels, and portable toilets have been delivered for migrants to use. Border Patrol says they are increasing the number of agents in the Del Rio sector and coordinating efforts to immediately address the current level of migrant encounters. Mayor Lozano applauding Border Patrol efforts, but says it's an overwhelming situation he says he saw coming.
We're in unprecedented times, and I did relay this message back in February to the administration, and I'm still waiting for that plan of action.
And by the way, a source tells me at last count there were some 7,000 migrants underneath the international bridge in Del Rio. And the mayor expects more migrants to be heading there. Border Patrol says the vast majority of single adults and many families will continue to be expelled from the country under Title 42 amid this pandemic. As agents try to process the multitude of migrants, capacity, where to put all of these people, will be one of several factors that could impact the procedures.
New at 6 from the border, thousands of migrants are crowded under a bridge in Del Rio. The KENS 5 border team obtained this video of people under the international bridge. Del Rio Mayor Bruno Lozano says the crowd is nearly 6,000. Within the last hour, U.S. Customs and Border Protection sent us a statement. They say they're trying to protect the migrants from heat-related illness by putting them in the shaded area. We're told it's a temporary staging site where migrants want to be taken into CPP custody.
President Joe Biden's border crisis is not going away as over 7,000 migrants travel to Del Rio, Texas, and are waiting near that bridge, waiting to be apprehended after they've crossed into the United States. This, as Department of Homeland Security reveals, migrant encounters in August once again topped 200,000, including more than 18,000 unaccompanied children. And Border Patrol releasing this shocking photo. Look at that. 2 small children abandoned along the Rio Grande River with a note left on the infant's carrier identifying them as siblings from the country of Honduras. Brandon Judd is the president of the National Border Patrol Council, and he joins us live. Brandon, good morning.
It's good to be with you. Thank you.
So, you know, that last image, it's a little 2-year-old girl and apparently a 3-month-old baby just abandoned by somebody, presumably their parents. But nonetheless, that's heartbreaking.
It is. And if we didn't have the resources right there at that time, we wouldn't have encountered those 2 children. And when you look at those 7,000 that are under the bridge, I'm going to tell you, it's amazing that we had the resources. You know, Steve, when I put on a uniform and I go to work, I can tell you every single day it seems like we have less and less resources. Because of those 7,000 people, we're having to pull resources from other sectors on the southwest border. We're pulling resources from the northern border, from the coastal borders, and we're destabilizing those borders as well. So instead of the Biden administration looking at this problem and saying there have been solutions in the past, this isn't rocket science, we can come up with a solution immediately, they continue to pretend like it's not happening. It's like they're putting their head in the sand and they're not protecting the innocent, they're not protecting United States citizens, and of course those small children that if we wouldn't have found them, they would have died.
Right. I know our White House correspondent brought this up last week in the White House briefing room, where he asked Jen Psaki, okay, let me get this straight. So if you have a company with more than 100 employees, you've got to make sure that all of your employees are vaccinated. But if you're a migrant walking across our southern border, you don't need a vaccine, right? And the answer was correct. Well, now it turns out the U.S. is going to start requiring all migrants who are going to apply for residency to be vaccinated, unless, Brandon, they're crossing illegally, which we know they're doing left and right.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I can personally tell you again that when they come in our custody, we don't test them for COVID. We don't vaccinate them. We just release them into the United States. And so, you know, yeah, he's requiring United States citizens to get vaccinated. But those people that are entering our country illegally, they don't have to get vaccinated. They're able to spread the disease throughout the United States. Again, the hypocrisy knows no end with this administration.
And you know, we mentioned this about 20 minutes ago. The evacuation flights into various countries out of Afghanistan have been put on pause for a week because of an outbreak of measles. I mean, you know, we've been talking about, are these people properly vetted? But then you wonder whether they're going to be bringing a disease into another country. And that is the worry about what we're looking at our southern border.
Yeah, COVID-19 is just one of the diseases that come into the United States. We see it all the time. We take people into custody all the time that seem sick. We take them to the hospital, and they're diagnosed with many different diseases, and that's what's coming across the border. You know, it's not just that they're not vaccinated with COVID-19. We're looking at hepatitis. We're looking at all kinds of different diseases that people aren't being vaccinated for, and that's coming into the United States right now as we speak.
Well, you know what, Brandon? The White House seems to be okay with what's happening. You look at those pictures, you see the kids abandoned, you see 7,000 people, sheltering in place under a bridge until they are apprehended by the government because they got to be metered out. Is this exactly what Joe Biden wants it to look like? Because it looks chaotic to us.
For his base, this is exactly what they want. They want the borders to be open. They want people to flood into the United States. We know that. We've seen that all the time. And all you have to do is look at who's stacked in the Department of Homeland Security. Look at their backgrounds. Look where they come from. They're coming from open borders groups. And that's the problem that we're looking at right now. There is no enforcement right now on the border, and that's why we're seeing these thousands upon thousands of people crossing. And it's not just 7,000 under the bridge. We already had more than 2,000 people in the stations in Del Rio. That's why we have to meter them out, because we just don't have the capacity to take these people into custody.
Well, it's a tough job, and we're glad you're there, but we wish it wasn't this situation. Brandon, thank you very much for joining us live today from Tucson.
Thank you.
Border Patrol agents in Eagle Pass found 2 children abandoned in the Rio Grande yesterday. This is a photo provided by the Border Patrol. Agents been patrolling the Rio Grande by boat discovered the 2-year-old girl and 3-month-old boy along the riverbank. A note under the infant's carrier said they were siblings from Honduras. The children didn't need medical attention and were taken to Uvalde Station in order to be processed. Officials conducted a search of the area and no other people of any age were found. The children were unharmed and taken to the Uvalde Station for processing.
Border Patrol El Paso Sector Chief Gloria Chavez said on Twitter, agents found a migrant stash house in Clint. We have photos that Chavez included in her tweet. Border Patrol agents found 29 migrants inside a small mobile home. Border Patrol says the migrants are from Ecuador, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Nicaragua. It's unclear if anyone other than the migrants have been detained.
A toddler and a 3-month-old baby left along the Rio Grande River. U.S. Border Patrol is working to identify them tonight. Take a look. Agents found the kids while conducting boat operations near Eagle Pass, Texas. You can see a little girl and a baby carrier. A note left behind said the brother and sister are from Honduras. The children were taken to a station in order to be processed. A scary situation at the border for one woman who says she never even left the country, but is now trapped in Mexico. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Natasha Paloma. KTSM weekend anchor Christina Aguayo joins us with more on her story.
Natasha, it's a case filled with confusion. Leslie Diaz and her husband Francisco Garcia say they simply wanted to visit family, but now find themselves separated from their children and unable to cross back into the United States. Officials say they broke the rules. It all started when the pair, both DACA recipients, took a trip right here to El Paso from Kentucky. While here, they decided to meet with relatives from Juarez on the Paso del Norte Bridge.
Immigration officers in the United States as well as Mexico, if we could get on the Santa Fe Bridge. They said we were good to go.
So they made the trek. However, the duo say they never crossed into Mexico when they met with family for about 15 minutes and were surprised when they were stopped by CBP officers on their way back.
On the way back down, they told us that we weren't allowed to have gone on the bridge. We were just there meeting family that we had never met. And just in the middle of the bridge, we didn't cross the line.
Diaz and Garcia were questioned and detained, even though she said she had both her state driver's license and her DACA ID. Her husband, on the other hand, did not have his DACA ID, but it wouldn't have mattered anyway. According to a spokesperson from CBP, in general, Anyone who leaves the U.S. must be able to prove they are legally allowed back into the country. CBP is not able, they say, to admit non-citizens without the proper documentation. That documentation for Dreamers would come in the form of an advance parole form, which could cost more than $360. According to the parole guide, DACA recipients who travel outside of the country without being granted approval will lose their DACA status. Furthermore, CBP says that once a person goes south of CBP inspection booths, they are no longer in the U.S., which means one step on the bridge is one step out of the country. For Diaz, who has been in the United States since she was 2 years old and has 3 children waiting back home in Kentucky, the thought of being made to stay in Mexico is unbearable.
I've been crying since we got here, you know, in hopes that, like, this is just a bad dream and we're gonna wake up, but we're not waking up from it.
For more on this story, jump online to theborderreport.com. Reporting for KTSM 9 News, Christina Awayo. Natasha.
All right, Christina, thank you.
So now the migrant surge at the southern border last month nearly breaking July's record high. New data showing border agents encountered more than 208,000 migrants in August. It's the second month in a row where border crossings have topped 200,000, marking a 233% jump from August of 2019. Bill Malugian's been all over the story, live today on the border in Texas. Bill, good morning to you. I do believe going back to January 20th, we're at now 1.2 million encounters since Joe Biden has been in the White House. Good morning.
Bill, good morning to you. That's right. Those numbers continue to be remarkable. And just to put it in perspective for you, 208,000 in August. That's roughly the size of Birmingham, Alabama, coming across our border in one single month. And we want to show you the kind of impact that's having. Take a live look at our drone up in Del Rio, Texas right now, where, okay, we apparently don't have the drone up right now. If we can pull up a second piece of video right now from the ground, what you're looking at here are thousands of migrants who are waiting to be processed underneath the international bridge in Del Rio, Texas. This was just sent to me by a source on the ground there. I'm told right now there are currently more than 8,000 migrants waiting to be processed underneath that bridge after they just crossed into the United States illegally. What I'm being told is happening there is Border Patrol facilities, their holding facilities in the area, are so overwhelmed, so over capacity, they just don't have anywhere to take these people right now. So they're coming across and they are just congregating underneath that bridge. This time yesterday, there were 4,000 people under that bridge. It has now swelled to over 8,200. That is a doubling in a span of just 24 hours. What I'm being told by my sources on the ground is these are mostly immigrants from Haiti, which might make sense because they recently had a presidential assassination in the last few months. They just had a recent earthquake, and I'm being told these people are streaming in by the minute. It's getting bigger every single hour. And these border agents on the ground there, their manpower is overstretched, overwhelmed, and they do not have the resources to cope with it right now. I'll send it back to you.
Ongoing as it goes. Thank you, Bill Malugian, back on the border today in Texas. Thank you.
Welcome back to a special edition of Tucker Carlson Tonight. Apprehensions along the U.S.-Mexico border are now at a 21-year high. Jason Jones is a retired captain with the Texas Department of Public Safety who spent the last few years doing nothing but working on this problem. And he joins us to assess the deterioration of the situation at the southern border. So, Jason, we all know that the southern border is bad right now, but how bad is it really? Because for the most part, we're not even paying attention anymore.
Yeah, it's good to be with you. Thanks for having me. You're absolutely right, Lara. Look, here's what we're really seeing when you look at this border surge and what's breaking down. The thing that we really have to think about is we can't look at the border the way we used to. It's not a U.S.-Mexico issue. The world is coming, and the data from the United States Customs and Border Protection proves that. I mean, they have apprehended people from over 148 countries in the first 10 months of this fiscal year. Now, in addition, we're also seeing more fentanyl from the cartel, specifically Sinaloa and Cartel Jalisco New Generation, than we have ever seen, which is perpetuating this overdose crisis at unbelievable levels. And then the third and final thing that we're really seeing, and it's very concerning, is this adjustment from the cartels from human smuggling into human trafficking, and to just make everyone aware of just how this is really playing out across that southern border, especially within the Gulf Cartel area at South Texas. What you're seeing is wristbands. Now, these bands we've collected along the southwest border, and this is what they're putting on men, women, and children. And when you see these where they're tight like this and they haven't been broken off, this is because they're placed on a child. And it goes to show how the cartels and the alien smuggling groups treat people as a commodity. And what the bands really represent is a process. Just like law enforcement is having a difficult time keeping up with the amount of people crossing at the southwest border, so are the cartels. So they're literally tagging people like a commodity. Some of the latest things that we're seeing, we've seen this since February, some of the latest tactics that we're seeing, because they're always changing, is even single males and single females who are always runners, because look, if they're apprehended, they go back to Mexico. So they're running. Now what agents are seeing in just the last few weeks is they're wearing 2 wristbands. And that's breaking news right here on the show. First is that the peso has been paid, which is what one represents. The second is the city in the state of Texas or around the country where they're going. So we've never been here before.
So basically, business is booming for the cartels, and people are paying the ultimate price for that. And I wonder, Jason, you said the world is coming to the southern border. So how does what is happening in Afghanistan factor into that? Because you've just now taken a terrorist group and given them an entire country.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's already been historically smuggling routes that go from Afghanistan over to Brazil and then up. And let me explain a little bit. They use what we refer to as long-haul smugglers, where Afghans will pay usually historically about $15,000 to $20,000 per person. They'll receive fake passports. They'll fly usually into the Gulf states of Qatar or Saudi Arabia. Then they'll take an additional flight over to South America to Brazil. And then from there, the smuggling groups just basically daisy chain, just like they do everyone else, all the way up through the Darien Gap into Mexico. And then from there, that's where the cartels start charging these incredible fees to get them in. And we've seen that for some time. Now, where I'm concerned right now with what has been happening is that we're seeing mass groups of people surging into all the ISTAN countries surrounding Afghanistan. You're going to see very soon, we've got about a 6 to 8 week window before we're starting to see people hit the southern part of South America. And the reason that's important, Lara, is because the Homeland Security enterprise and programs that we have downrange have already been derailed because of the amount of people crossing through the Darien and other areas. And I won't go into much detail there except to say now we're adding this crisis in Afghanistan to an already crisis going on at the southern border. And the world knows that if you come to the southern border, you're going to make it into the country.
Which means every terrorist that wants to try to enter the United States through the southern border knows that they can do so. Thank you so much, Jason Jones, so much for that last line of defense, right?
Today, the governor of Texas ordered the Department of Public Safety to shut down 6 ports of entry. News Nation's Maggie Glenn of our Austin station KXAN joins us live. Maggie, before today, the governor wanted law enforcement to focus on arresting migrants for criminal activity, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that is still a goal of Operation Lone Star. And actually, just this morning, the Texas Department of Public Safety held their first of many weekly Operation Lone Star briefings. And they went over statistics related to criminal trespassing arrests. We heard from Lieutenant Chris Olivares, who said that DPS is now arresting 20 to 40 migrants a day for just criminal trespassing, which, you know, is exactly what the operation is intending to do. That's what the governor has directed these officials to do. However, it's causing lots of headaches and lots of delays for local criminal justice departments. So today I actually spoke with a Valverde County attorney who, again, Valverde is right along the border. It's near Del Rio, where we're seeing the most issues right now. And he said that just last month, his local jail was so overwhelmed with migrants that local police weren't able to arrest criminals in their own community unless it was a felony. That's how overcrowded their jails were. That problem has now been resolved, but he was critical of the governor for having such an overreaching demand to arrest just anyone pretty much for criminal trespassing. And so he has acknowledged, however, that the state is doing everything they can, given that the federal government really hasn't been present in responding to this crisis at our southern border. Just hours ago, the Biden administration actually reversed Governor Abbott's decision to close those 6 ports of entries. So that won't be happening as of right now. We're still waiting to hear back from Border Patrol to see the future of those ports possibly being shut down. But as of right now, they're still going to remain open.
New images underscoring the severity of the border crisis. Take a look at this drone footage from Del Rio, Texas. More than 4,000 migrants huddled under a bridge there. They are waiting to be apprehended. Meanwhile, agents found these 2 small children abandoned along the Rio Grande, one of them just 3 months old. Joining me now is Derek Malls, former DEA special agent in charge, and Lieutenant Christopher Olivares of the Texas Department of Public Safety. Let me start with you, Deputy, or Lieutenant. When you see thousands of people in the heat of the summer, and you know the Border Patrol is already overwhelmed, where are these people going to go?
You know, Dana, that's the situation right now. And as you can see, it's not decreasing by any means. Just this morning, I heard there was reports of close to 8,000 illegal immigrants under that bridge in Del Rio, and they're expecting 20,000 in the next coming days. So it's really out of control right now. Border Patrol is overwhelmed. They're stretched thin. And it's a situation that could have been taken care of, you know, back in March when this first started, but right now it's to the point where it's just out of control right now.
Before I ask Derek a question, tell us what's behind you in your shot there.
So these are some drugs that we've seized. Our DPS personnel have seized within the past couple of days during Operation Lone Star. Our DPS troopers have been involved with numerous seizures along the southern border because of the current situation, because the fact that cartels are exploiting the situation, the fact that Border Patrol is overwhelmed and stretched thin by processing these illegal immigrants. So they take advantage of that and they exploit the gaps along the border. And because of that, you're seeing a surge of drugs that are coming across, illicit drugs, cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl.
So Derek, to that point, then you see, I don't know if you can see all this video that they've provided. I mean, and this is just in the last couple of days. So these drugs are going from Texas and they're going all around the country. So this is a national problem, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely, Dana. If you looked at the statistics, I mean, there's 10,469 pounds of fentanyl seized this first 11 months of the fiscal year. If you compare it to last 11 months last year, there's a 160% increase. Then when you look at the amount of fentanyl fake pills that are being seized, like in DEA, Phoenix, Arizona, they reported 3 million pills seized in the month of August alone. They went from seizing 0 pills in 2015 to 6 million pills in 2020. Now in 21, in 1 month, they had 3 million pills. So the fentanyl pills are all over the country. But then, Dana, when you look at the statistics of the fentanyl-related deaths, like in Orange County, California, a 1,067% increase in the last 5 years. So fentanyl's killing at record levels. Methamphetamine is up. So all indications are the cartel business is booming. They're making billions of dollars not only from the drug smuggling, but the migrant smuggling. And nobody in the Washington political environment is speaking about it. Mainstream media is burying it.
Lieutenant, the border apprehensions in just the month of August, 208,877. August 2020 was 50,000. August 2019, 62,000. So a huge increase. I have a question about those 2 little kids that were found abandoned. What happens to kids like that in a situation where they've just been left on the side of the road?
You know, Dane, that's a good question. The thing is that, you know, these smugglers, and that's a perfect example right there where they have no regard for the individuals they are smuggling, leaving children behind along the river in those type of conditions, especially right now with the South Texas heat. These children, if they don't have any family here in the U.S. or their mother or their father, chances are they're going to end up in some type of foster home. And that is a very sad situation that's taking place for these innocent children that are victimized because of this current situation.
Derek, what do people need to know about the dangers of taking anything that has fentanyl in it?
So, Dana, just like the government is changing the way law enforcement speaks, like you can't say illegal alien anymore, you have to say non-documented immigrant. So I would say they need to change the wording. It's not an opioid crisis. Fentanyl murders, fentanyl poisoning are at record levels, and kids are dying, athletes are dying. There was an NYPD cop that died recently, a sergeant. So there's people all over the country dying, and families are being destroyed. So the government has to wake up and start aggressively attacking the production labs in Mexico.
There's a reason why the president's numbers on the border are so low, and it doesn't seem like they're going to be changing anything. We don't have any notification. They're not talking about it. They're not seeming to do anything about it. And it's very frustrating and troubling and terrible for the children and very concerning for the people out there who might be tempted to try one of these drugs and ends up being fentanyl. And as you said, poisoned or murdered because of it. Thank you both. We appreciate you. We'll stay in touch.
Good luck, man. Got a big job.
Let's take a look at some of these numbers here. The August migrant encounters, you'll see there's a 317% increase from August of 2020, just a year ago. Let's pull up the fentanyl seizures at the border. These numbers here, again, a difference of a year, as you can see, or excuse me, from a month, a 34% increase from July of 2021 just to August of 2021. For those people who don't know, what does something like that do to a person?
Well, you know, they confiscated over 5,400 pounds of fentanyl, and that's enough to kill around 1.2 billion people. That ought to tell you enough. And it only takes probably the amount of 2 grains of sand to kill you. So it's very potent, and it's a lot less expensive than heroin. So it's coming across phenomenally at such a rate of speed that, you know, when you hear your law enforcement say, for goodness sakes, methamphetamine use is up, but fentanyl is 200% increase in that drug alone, and it's deadly. It's absolutely deadly. And the analogs and the prelogs that they're putting in with that, when these customers per se take that, they don't know what they're getting. It could be laced with anything. So those are the tablets that I'm looking at right now. That's what they call, and that's what I've seen at the border. It's unbelievable when you go to the Rio Grande Valley and you see what the Border Patrol has confiscated. It's unimaginable.
Will Forming, acting Homeland Security Secretary, now visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation with us. Chad, appreciate it. Thanks for making the time. Would there be a way to require all of these migrants that are intercepted by the Border Patrol be vaccinated before being released out into America?
Well, absolutely. There's certainly a way that Border Patrol, working with a number of medical professionals inside the Department of Homeland Security, could test these individuals, could require them to get the vaccine. As of right now, they're not testing. There's no requirement for the vaccine. There's not even a requirement to quarantine before they are released into American communities, and that's certainly the wrong approach. So if we're talking about vaccine,
why do you think that is?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, again, they're not, they believe, again, that the borders should be open. They should be allowed to come in. And right now, they don't have the infrastructure to do all that. They don't have the infrastructure to test, to acquire the vaccine and the like. It would require some investment, and it's easier for them to simply require the migrant themselves or the private sector or even the state and local officials to do it rather than have the federal government do it, even though it's their policy that's allowing them to cross the border and being released into communities every day.
One thing that DHS also deals with, obviously, is TSA and airport security and putting people on airplanes, which conceivably, if what Dr. Fauci proposed or says might happen, would fall to TSA. Take a listen to Dr. Fauci.
I would support that. If you want to get on a plane and travel with other people, that you should be vaccinated.
They're the infrastructure within TSA and DHS to do that and enforce that?
No, absolutely not. Not at the moment. And you don't want TSA doing that at the end of the day. That's not their job. Their job is to make sure that dangerous people and dangerous items don't make it aboard that commercial aircraft. They should not be finding and looking for individuals that aren't vaccinated, don't have a mask on, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not their job. We shouldn't make it their job. And if you do, then you're going to take away from the security job that they've been doing for almost 20 years now. And that should be their focus.
We're watching video now from the Texas State Police who've taken over a lot of the patrols now on the southern border because Border Patrol is so overwhelmed.
I'm wondering if you think that the genie can be put back in the bottle and this incredibly large number of people we see coming over can be reduced.
Well, it absolutely can be reduced. And why do I know that? Because we did that in 2019 during the crisis. We put a playbook together that we executed on. We handed that playbook over to the Biden administration on Inauguration Day, and they've simply chosen.
I just have to stop you real quick. Right now we're showing Afghanistan video, so we're going to just make sure people realize that's not on the southern border.
And Congressman, that's why obviously by amping up the number from 1 to 2 to 10, you were trying to make a point, and that is it appears some Democrats are going to vote for this regardless of what's in it, even if it doesn't make any sense.
That is exactly right. There's no limit on their appetite for amnesty. They want to just erase the rule of law. As we know, we have an open southern border. Steve, we have people coming in from at least 150 countries, according to Border Patrol customs agents. And we have hardened criminals coming across that border, and the Democrats do not care. That's the point. They are on record over and over. We had a 13-hour Judiciary Committee hearing on Monday, and they went on record time and time again. They do not care. And we're so sorry for Maureen and her loss. There will be more losses in America if these policies are enacted. This is very dangerous stuff, and everybody needs to wake up and realize what's going on here.
Like any other, giving us an in-depth look at what goes into rescue operations in those wildernesses. 13's Wiley Jahari participated in a 5-hour hike with Border Patrol. He joins us live in studio. Wiley, did you actually feel the intensity of what it's like for those trying to cross?
Brandon, yes and no, because that day it was really cloudy. There was an overcast, so we didn't really get to experience the heat while we were on this mainly uphill trek. Now, we started at the bottom of Otay Mountain near the Mexican side of the border, and we made our way to the road. It took us 5 hours, but for smugglers who take this path, Border Patrol told me it usually takes them 3 to 5 days. That's if they even make it. Take a look.
A trip to San Diego's side of the border shows us just how vast the border crisis really is. This is the path of a smuggler, but it's also the path of families and kids who dream of life in the U.S.
I mean, I think the two things that are probably the worst is seeing like little kids out here. I've had to carry little kids out of canyons and stuff, and that's kind of gut-wrenching.
Once you start adding kids to the mix, they can't travel as fast, they can't travel as quickly, they succumb to the weather much easier than adults do. So whether it's high temperatures or low temperatures, the rain and snow that we have out here, kids are going to be much more vulnerable than single adults are.
According to U.S. Customs and Border Protection, in fiscal year 2021 through February, over 29,000 unaccompanied children and single minors were encountered along the southwest border. And some who travel on the Otay Mountain Trail experience harsh conditions. Border Patrol agents say children are utilized by smugglers as passports. Children have walked, even crawled, these very harsh terrain.
As you can see, it's extremely steep and very rugged and rocky. I think we've only been here 20-30 minutes and completely out of breath.
Hundreds of miles across the U.S.-Mexico border consists of deadly desert wilderness, but the idea of life in the United States continues to lure many to take that risk.
People go down because of rattlesnake bites. That's usually common during the summer. So they'll take breaks, sleep here overnight, dealing with the elements. In the summer, it's hot. In the winter, it's extremely cold. Especially if they're traveling at night. There can be boulders and they don't see the boulders, and next thing you know, they have they're incapacitated because maybe they have a fracture.
In addition, those trying to cross deal with extreme dehydration, a similar condition migrants in our local Jacumba region experience. Agent Carlos Betones with the El Centro sector says that so far this year, agents have rescued 315 undocumented immigrants.
What we have seen is that these callous smugglers will not hesitate to leave an undocumented migrant behind. If they're slowing down the group, if they're showing any kind of injury, or if they're slowing them down, they will leave them behind for dead.
And in turn, that turns into a rescue mission for agents. San Diego Border Patrol showed me how rescue operations unfold. One agent even told us of his toughest one.
Called up, said that she was lost and she was cold. She was with a group of 5. When we arrived on scene, she was still talking to me. As soon as we were going to start moving, she started deteriorating mentally.
Border Search, Trauma, and Rescue Agent Miguel Pena specializes in rescue operations routinely. He says he had to carry the woman to the nearest helicopter pad, but it was already too late.
Started hailing. A helicopter was coming over. She was going to get picked up in that area. Then it started raining. Then it got like this. Helicopter couldn't land anymore. We could hear it. She died in the helicopter.
From cameras to canines, and more recently, the rescue beacon. All efforts to help save human lives. But sometimes agents come across footsteps. In those cases, they rely on their senses.
As you can see, the dirt's pretty fine. So you can tell that the imprints are pretty fine themselves. That kind of lets us know that it's probably within the last, I don't know, probably the last 8 hours.
Hasn't been wind blown, so there's wind up here. So when the wind blows, it starts to take off the edges, and so it gets more rounded. And you can tell in the coloration of the dirt, as the dirt, you step in it, and it's one color, and as it dries, it goes back to the same color as everything else that's been dried by the air and the sun and stuff. So.
And happening behind me right now, a rescue demonstration. Right now, the weather is pretty nice, but oftentimes migrants and families that need to be rescued are unlucky because the weather does not allow for helicopters to enter the area.
And in that case, a drone may drop a water bottle for those in distress. Across the Otay wilderness, agents say rescue operations happen almost daily, showing us another side of this ongoing issue, detailing how agents risk it all in order to help save lives.
Wow. Brandon, yeah, I mean, there you have it. That day, I had 10 bottles that day, but Border Patrol told me they come across individuals who only have one. And again, as Agent Patonis said, it's simply because they don't care. Smugglers don't care. They can leave you behind for dead. They can mislead you. And a sad situation, to say the least.
But you're talking about a 3 to 5 day trek with one bottle of water. I mean, you spent 5 hours out there and brought 10 just to be safe. And these individuals maybe have just one. I want to bring Scott Gross from the Weather Department in here because you do mention that it was a nicer day out there. Scott, thank you for joining us. It was a nicer day out there when you were there. But Scott, we see this all too often. The temperatures, in the summer times, even right now, we're talking excessive heat sometimes.
Yeah, and we just got out of an excessive heat warning just a couple days ago, if you remember that, where temperatures were anywhere between 110, 113 degrees, even in the Acamba area. It was right up there, 112, 114, and these people are walking out in there without any any sort of hydration. So
very scary
it's
situation.
Phenomenal, right? Of what they're willing to risk just to get into the country.
Exactly. Wally, thank you so much for sharing that story and that perspective. One we don't get to see all too often. We hear about the stories, but you got to experience it, and I'm sure it's one you won't forget.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me tonight.
Yeah, Wiley, thanks.